There's a specific moment, and if you recognize this pattern, you've had it many times, where someone says, "You're so strong," and something doesn't quite land right. Not because it's wrong. Not because you want to contradict them. But because it doesn't capture the full picture. Because from where you're standing, on the inside of that sentence, it doesn't feel like strength exactly. Feels like Tuesday. Like getting through another day of carrying things that are heavy and not letting anyone see how heavy they actually are. And you smile. And say thank you. And keep going. 'Cause what else would you say? Actually, I'm not strong, I'm just tired in a very functional way. That's not a sentence that fits most conversations. So the word strong lands on you and you accept it and you carry that too. And here's what's curious about that exchange. The word strong, once it attaches to a person, doesn't just describe them, prescribes them. It tells them, and everyone else in the room, what they're expected to be. And that expectation, once established, becomes part of the social contract. People stop checking in with the strong one in the same way they check in with everyone else. Stop offering the same quality of concern. Because the strong one, by definition, doesn't need it. Which means the stronger you appear to be, the less support you're offered. And the less support you're offered, the more you have to appear strong. And the loop closes around you without anyone noticing it happened. Mark Leary at Duke University, whose research on self-presentation and social identity has shaped decades of work in social psychology, documented how external labels, the descriptions others apply to us, consistently over time, don't just reflect who we are. They shape who we become. We self-monitor to maintain the version of ourselves that others have learned to expect. We suppress what contradicts it. We perform what confirms it. And eventually, the performance and the person become difficult to distinguish, not just for the people watching but for the person inside it. The one who is always called strong learns to be strong, in public, in relationships, in the face of things that would bring most people to a halt. And the question of whether that strength is real or performed stops mattering. Because there's no longer a clear place where one ends and the other begins. You've probably been told at some point that you're so strong, and you smiled, and said thank you, and kept carrying everything alone. What nobody said, and what I want to say now, is that strength that's never allowed to rest, is not really strength, it's survival. I've written about the difference. Link in the description. And in the first pinned comment. Cheryl Woods-Giscombe at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill has spent years researching what she calls the Superwoman schema, a constellation of behaviors and expectations, well documented in the literature, that centers on the obligation to project strength at all times, to suppress emotional needs, and to resist being seen as vulnerable or in need of help. Her research examines the real, measurable health consequences of living inside that expectation over time. Not just psychologically but physiologically. Because the body is not indifferent to what we ask it to hold. Allostatic load is the term health researchers use for the cumulative biological cost of chronic stress, the wear that accumulates on the body's regulatory systems when they are kept in a sustained state of activation. It shows up in elevated cortisol levels, in disrupted sleep, in immune function that becomes gradually less reliable, in the kind of exhaustion that a vacation doesn't fix because it's been building for years, not weeks. The person who is always called strong, who performs strength across every context, every relationship, every crisis large and small, is often carrying an allostatic load that no one can see. Not even them. Because they've gotten so efficient at suppressing the signals that something inside them has learned to stop sending them. They're not sure if they're okay. They're not sure if they're not okay. They just know they're moving. And moving has always meant functioning. And functioning has always meant strong. But there's something else, something you feel but can't always explain, that lives inside this particular kind of exhaustion. It's not the tiredness of having worked hard. That's a clean tiredness. This is something murkier. It's the tiredness of having maintained a version of yourself for years that doesn't include the full range of who you actually are. The tiredness of leaving parts of yourself at the door every time, because bringing them inside would disrupt what's expected of you. And it's the specific, quiet ache of having been praised so consistently for your capacity to endure that no one has ever thought to ask whether you should have had to endure it in the first place. You're so strong. You'll get through this. It's meant as comfort. It arrives as a sentence. It closes the door on anything more complicated than getting through. And the person who is always called strong learns, in that moment, that this is not a conversation where they are invited to be something other than strong. And they aren't, most of the time, even aware of the decision that follows. They just become strong again. Because the room is expecting it, and the room has been expecting it for a very long time. And here's what almost no one says to that person. The tiredness is not a character flaw. It's not a sign that you were never actually strong. It's a sign that you've been carrying something real for a long time without enough support. And the word strong, as well meant as it always is, has been part of what made it hardest to put it down. Because to put it down would be to stop being what everyone needs you to be. And stopping, for someone who has been the anchor for this long, feels like a form of abandonment. But strength that cannot rest is not sustainable. And a version of you that cannot be tired, cannot be uncertain, cannot need, is not a full person. It's a function. And you were never just that. You were never as strong as they said. You were tired in a way that learned to look like strength. And the cruelest part is that the better you got at it, the more it became the only version of you the world knew how to see. And there's something that makes this pattern specifically resistant to change. The strength, performed long enough, becomes what other people plan around. Their stability in some cases depends on yours. Their ability to show up as they do depends on knowing that you'll hold what needs holding. And you can feel that dependence. You have always been able to feel it. Which means putting the weight down isn't just about your own exhaustion. It carries an additional cost. The disruption it would cause in every relationship that has been organized around your ability to carry things without showing the weight. So you keep going. Because stopping feels like letting people down. And for someone who has spent this long being defined by their reliability, the idea of becoming the source of someone else's instability is one of the hardest things to contemplate. But here's what's true. The people who love you, really love you, not just depend on you, can hold more than you've been giving them credit for. They can handle knowing you're tired. They can adjust. They can share the weight. They just haven't been asked to. And here's what asking would actually cost, if the armored person let themselves try. Not as much as the history has predicted. Cheryl Woods-Giscomes's research on the Superwoman schema found something specific in her interviews that the quantitative data alone couldn't capture. The people living inside this pattern did not fundamentally believe they were undeserving of support. They believed something more precise than that. They believed, based on what the experience of not asking had consistently taught them, that they would not know how to receive it. That the offer would arrive and something in them would immediately redirect it outward, or minimize it, or find a reason it wasn't quite right. And that fear, the fear not of being denied but of being unable to accept, is one of the most specific costs of spending too long as the strong one. Because receiving requires something the armored person has had very little practice at. Stillness. Not the stillness of performing calm. The actual kind, where you let something land in you and stay there, without immediately organizing around it, without turning it into something you can use to be more capable or more functional. Just the simple, unfamiliar experience of being on the receiving end of care and not doing anything with it other than letting it be received. That's a skill. And like all skills, it develops through practice. What the person who was called strong needs is not to become weak. It's to become practiced at receiving. Those are different projects. And the second one is actually possible. If you've been the person who holds everything together for everyone, I want you to know something. The fact that you're still standing is not proof that you're okay. Sometimes it just means you got very good. Looking okay. That's not a small thing to carry. I've spent a long time sitting with this pattern. What it looks like, where it comes from, and what very slowly begins to shift. It's all in the description. And in the first pinned comment. Now I want to ask you something directly. When's the last time someone saw you tired, actually tired, and didn't respond by reminding you how strong you are? When's the last time you said, "I'm not okay," and the room stayed with that, instead of rushing to reassure you that you'd be fine? And when's the last time you let yourself be seen without already knowing what the response would be? Without pre-calibrating how much to show based on what you thought the other person could handle? Because for a lot of people in this pattern, The editing happens before the conversation even starts. They do a quick calculation. How much of this can I actually bring? And they adjust accordingly. And the adjusted version is always smaller than the true one. And everyone around them, receiving only the adjusted version, concludes they're doing fine. And they are. Technically. The way something can be functioning and still, underneath, be running on something it shouldn't have to. You're allowed to be tired. Not in the abstract, specifically, right now, in whatever you're currently carrying. You're allowed to say it to someone without immediately following it with, "But I'll be okay." You're allowed to not know for a moment whether you will be. That's not the collapse of your strength. It's what strength actually looks like when it's being honest. And the people around you, the ones who have been leaning on your strength for this long, they can handle the honest version. Or at least they deserve the chance to try. If this video put words to something you've been carrying quietly, leave a comment. Tell me what you're tired of carrying that you keep calling strength. I read everything. Subscribe if you haven't, because next week, we go into what happens when the tiredness finally gets too loud to ignore. What that moment looks like. And what it makes possible that nothing else could.